Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here with Jason Blaha Strength and Fitness, and today I want to chat with you guys and gals a little bit about why high carbohydrate diets are essential for muscle growth and performance. But again, if you guys would please click like down below and drop me a comment, I would appreciate it so much. Thank you. Let's get over into the topic. All right, when it comes to carbohydrates, we have to understand hormonally what's happened in terms of energy balance, everything. We have to understand what's happening from a muscle growth and a performance perspective. So, performance should be pretty straightforward. I think people can grasp this concept really, really well. We know that even in fat adapted athletes, they do need a significant amount of carbohydrates. It's been shown repeatedly in numerous studies that when carbohydrates go low, performance suffers even if dietary fat is used, even to some extent in endurance athletes. Even the leading low carb experts like Dr. Jeff Volek and other people who actually really believe in using keto diets and low carbs for a lot of things have tried to test this, and what they have found is that yes, they can get keto adapted endurance athletes, and again, endurance can actually use some fat. Keep that in mind. But in keto adapted endurance athletes, what they generally find is that, yes, they can burn fat. And yes, in their case, adding extra fat to the diet can improve, endurance for endurance sports, marathon running, things like that, right? Absolutely. But they still are going to use carbohydrates as a primary in those cases. And what's generally been found is that on lower carb diets, even when calories are equated, performance tends to suffer, right? Performance tends to suffer. And again, I'm not saying healthy fats can't be really useful for all these roles that we're talking about, but without significant carbohydrate, performance is going to suffer every time. Muscle mass is going to suffer also. Now, keeping in mind though, we're talking about even endurance sports in that case, right? So this is where you actually would expect really high fat to be pretty good, because again, when we're dealing, with aerobic versus anaerobic energy systems, you're able to burn fat to some extent for those. Whereas in higher performance activities, right, anaerobic, weightlifting, sprinting, high intensity cardio, we're back to glycogen. Well, technically ATP, but then we're dealing with glycogen, a glycolytic system after a certain number of reps. Now, the really low reps, it's all ATP, right? We understand that. A little bit higher reps or any sort of conditioning, definitely going to be glycogen. We are over to glycogen at that point. And so again, we understand that carbohydrates are training fuel, right? For any sort of real volume. It could be stated, for lifting purposes, if we don't burn that many calories during the lifting, maybe not as much. But again, what we find is that performance still seems to be dependent upon a significant number of carbohydrate. Okay, it's still dependent upon it. But any sort of real volume activity, you have to have carbohydrates. This has been shown repeatedly. In the research, and there's a reason all the top athletes. So let's set that aside and say, well, let's not even look at research. Let's look at elite athletes all over the world. Almost every single elite athlete, almost every single professional athlete, very high carbohydrate diets. And I'm not going to get into the silly argument people make, well, that's only for athletes. The average person doesn't need it. Well, the average person doesn't need calories is what you mean, right? Carbohydrate is still going to be better than a lot of dietary fat sources for the average person. It's definitely going to be better than saturated fat. So I digress. Back over to the point of performance. All right. So what about when we talk about muscle growth and this stuff too? All right. Well, these are real conversations we need to have. So when we are looking at anabolic hormones, insulin is critical for muscle growth. Right, it's critical. It's probably the most anabolic hormone that we have in our body. Right, more anabolic than testosterone and other stuff. And we're talking about in normal ranges. Now you start injecting stuff, this gets different. But also, incidentally, a lot of the guys I know, and I try not to say anything. I have friends who'll chime in these conversations. Who are like, "Well, I don't eat as many carbs and I do this," and I'm like, "Yeah, but you're also juiced to the gills. It gives you some wiggle room." with enough with enough steroids, obviously, certain aspects of diet gives you more wiggle room for muscle growth, performance, fat loss. Like, we all understand this, and that's going to scale with drugs. Now, that being said, we do have to understand the hormonal environment. Insulin is anabolic. Now, you'll get people who go, but you'll get insulin resistance from carbs. Really? Why would you think that? Keeping in mind, not all carbs are equal, just like not all fat is equal. Well, as opposed to what? Saturated fat makes you insulin resistant. So is that what you want to replace it with? Right, not all carbohydrates are equal. Starchy carbohydrates, or even fruit, like fiber mixed with your sugars, your fruit sugars and things, doesn't cause insulin resistance. Doesn't cause it. No one's getting insulin resistant from rice, potatoes, and watermelon. Okay, this is not what's happening. It's refined fructose. So again, when we have these conversations, well, you could get insulin resistant from too many carbohydrates. Well, too many of the wrong carbohydrates. Now, for someone who's lifting weights and training hard, do you really think you're going to eat enough starchy carbohydrates to get insulin resistant? I want people to think that through logically for a moment. Are you eating 1,000 grams, 1,500 grams of it? Are you eating 5,000 calories of rice? What are we talking about here? No, this is not happening. This is not practical. It doesn't happen. If you're eating a bunch of refined sugar, sure, like if you're dumping table sugar and everything. But failing that, we don't get insulin resistant from eating quality carbohydrates, even if they're our dominant fuel source, right? Especially if we're training. Now, we could make the case that healthy fats, polyunsaturated fats and things, can improve insulin sensitivity. That can be beneficial here because, again, insulin. It's all about insulin. Insulin being critical for muscle growth, right? All of the carbs also critical for glycogen storage. Hopefully everyone understands this too, all right? Full glycogen stores going to produce better muscle protein synthesis, going to produce better recovery, okay? We need to be clear on that. Again, insulin being a transport protein, getting amino acids and glucose into your muscle cells. But that glucose, right? And people can't say, well, we can get enough glucose from gluconeogenesis from protein. Yeah, you're not going to eat enough protein to do that. Not for a lifter, not for gaining muscle, number one. Number two, it's not happening in the muscle tissue. It's happening in the liver. You're getting a liver glycogen, which then goes to the bloodstream. You're never going to replenish muscle glycogen off protein. It's not going to happen. This is the delusional. Yeah, I'm sorry, dude. A 200-pound lifter is never going to get full glycogen storage just because he eats 300 grams of protein a day, or 400, or 500. This is not going to happen if he's eating no carbohydrate. Okay? So we have to think in terms of these hormonal responses. We have to think in terms of glycogen stores. Again, reduces soreness, improves performance, right? Speeds up recovery. And the sooner we can recover, the faster we can gain muscle. The sooner we can train a muscle, again, the more volume we can train a muscle with. Right? Recovery is king. Other hormonal things to think about: higher insulin response, lowers SHBG, increases free testosterone. And we find this historically. Again, there's a reason most of the top bodybuilders eat really high carbohydrate diets even before all the PEDs and before all the insulin and other stuff they're using. All right, carbohydrates, they're critical. Higher carbohydrate diets produce the most muscle growth and the most performance over and over and over. And again, we have to be clear. All these same people have had access to lower carb diets. Higher fat, lower carb diets have existed for decades. Many of them have tried them. Selection still dictates that because we operate better, we gain muscle better, we perform better on higher carbs, that the cream always rises to the top. It's not like thousands and thousands of athletes don't mess with and try the other approach. It just doesn't work. It doesn't produce as good of results ever. It just doesn't. or else they would all do it.